How to catch a tiger. The opening question, how to catch a tiger, immediately establishes a framework of expectation. The mind anticipates practical advice, perhaps drawing from memories of nature documentaries, adventure stories, or childhood tales of brave hunters and clever strategies. We expect techniques involving nets, tranquilizer darts, pit traps, or elaborate schemes. The brain begins constructing scenarios, accessing stored knowledge about tigers, their speed, strength, hunting patterns, vulnerabilities. This expectation building is the first phase of the trap's operation. The human cognitive system, evolved for pattern recognition and survival, cannot help but engage with the puzzle. We are neurologically wired to seek solutions, to close open loops, to transform questions into answers. The trap leverages this fundamental drive, using our own mental momentum against us. Trust, Chikormal, or 1. The technology of misdirection. The second line, before a tiger catches you, appears to provide clarification while actually deepening the misdirection. The mind interprets this as a temporal constraint, a crucial timing element in the tiger catching strategy. We might imagine scenarios where speed is essential, where the window of opportunity is narrow, where the hunter must act before becoming the hunted. This interpretation feels logical, even urgent. But this is precisely where the technology becomes most sophisticated. The line functions as a red herring that reinforces our initial interpretation while simultaneously planting the seeds of its own destruction. The phrase, before a tiger catches, you can be read as a temporal clause modifying the action of catching, but it can equally be read as the complete answer to the original question. This dual functionality is the mechanism's hidden gear, the component that will eventually spring the trap. 2. The neurological process of entrapment. From a neuroscientific perspective, the tiger riddle exploits several key aspects of how the brain processes language and constructs meaning. The brain's left hemisphere, specialized for sequential processing and linguistic analysis, works to parse the syntax and extract logical relationships. Meanwhile, the right hemisphere engages in pattern matching and holistic interpretation, seeking to understand the broader context and meaning. The trap works by creating a temporary misalignment between these hemispheric processes. The left brain follows the syntactic structure step by step, while the right brain anticipates meaning based on familiar patterns. When the final line, is how to catch a tiger, appears, it forces a sudden reorganization of understanding that creates what cognitive scientists call a conceptual shift or insight moment. This reorganization triggers a cascade of neural activity. The anterior temporal lobe, responsible for semantic processing, suddenly reinterprets the meaning of previously processed information. The inferior frontal gyrus, involved in language comprehension, works to reconcile the new understanding with the old, most notably the anterior cingulate cortex, which monitors conflicts between competing interpretations, fires rapidly as it detects the mismatch between expectation and reality. 3. The moment of capture, the revelation moment, when the reader realizes that before a tiger catches you, the answer to how to catch a tiger represents the spring of the trap. This is not merely an aha moment, but a complete cognitive capture. The mind experiences what researchers call cognitive dissonance resolution, the sudden relief that comes from reconciling conflicting interpretations. But the capture goes deeper than mere surprise. The riddle has effectively hijacked the reader's attention and mental resources, forcing them to reconstruct their understanding from the ground up. This reconstruction process requires significant cognitive effort and creates a memorable impression that embeds the experience firmly in memory. The emotional component of this capture cannot be understated. The transition from confusion to understanding triggers a release of dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with reward and pleasure. This neurochemical response creates a positive association with the trap itself, making the victim complicit in their own capture. We don't merely understand the riddle, we appreciate it, enjoy it, even admire its cleverness. 4. The technology of paradox. The tiger riddle belongs to a broader category of cognitive technologies that we might call paradox engines. These are linguistic or conceptual structures that create temporary contradictions in understanding, forcing the mind to work through seemingly impossible logical states before arriving at resolution. The paradox here is temporal and logical. How can before a tiger catches you be both a timing constraint on tiger catching and the method of tiger catching itself? The answer lies in recognizing that the riddle has redefined what it means to catch something. In conventional usage, catching implies capturing, containing, or seizing. But the riddle reveals an alternative meaning: to understand, to anticipate, to mentally grasp before being grasped. This redefinition is itself a technology, a method of expanding conceptual boundaries and forcing new connections between ideas. The reader who successfully navigates the paradox emerges with an enhanced understanding not just of the specific riddle, but of the flexibility of language and meaning itself. 5. Expectation as vulnerability. The tiger riddle demonstrates how expectation functions as both a cognitive tool and a cognitive vulnerability. Our expectations allow us to process information efficiently, filling in gaps and predicting outcomes based on patterns from past experience. Without expectations, we would be overwhelmed by the constant novelty of sensory input and unable to function in a complex world. Yet these same expectations create blind spots that can be exploited by cleverly constructed traps. The riddle works because it initially conforms to expected patterns: question, clarification, answer, while subverting the expected content at each stage. It's a form of cognitive camouflage that allows the trap to approach undetected. This vulnerability has profound implications beyond wordplay. In broader contexts, our expectation-based processing makes us susceptible to various forms of manipulation, from magic tricks and confidence schemes to propaganda and false reasoning. Understanding how the tiger riddle works helps illuminate these larger patterns of cognitive exploitation. 6. The recursive nature of the trap. Perhaps the most elegant aspect of the tiger riddle is its recursive structure. The riddle doesn't just catch the reader once, it continues to catch them each time they attempt to explain it to others. The person who has been caught by the riddle often becomes the tiger, setting the same trap for new victims. This transforms the individual from prey to predator, from caught to catcher. This recursive property reveals something profound about the nature of ideas themselves. The most effective ideas are not passive objects to be transmitted, but active processes that reproduce themselves through human minds. The tiger riddle is a kind of cognitive virus, a self-replicating pattern that spreads through populations by exploiting universal features of human cognition. 7. The broader technology of linguistic entrapment. The principles underlying the tiger riddle extend far beyond this specific example. They represent a broader technology of linguistic entrapment that appears throughout human culture. Zen koans use similar mechanisms to break linear thinking and provoke insight. Jokes rely on expectation and surprise to create humor. Magic tricks exploit predictable cognitive patterns to create wonder. Even in everyday communication, we unconsciously employ these technologies. A well-told story builds expectations and subverts them. A compelling argument leads the listener through a logical progression that makes the conclusion seem inevitable. A memorable phrase creates cognitive hooks that lodge in memory and influence future thinking. 8. The neuroscience of surprise. The surprise element in the tiger riddle triggers specific neural pathways that have evolutionary significance. The brain's surprise response evolved as a survival mechanism, helping our ancestors quickly recognize and respond to unexpected events that might represent threats or opportunities. When something violates our predictions about the world, the brain releases norepinephrine, increasing alertness and preparing for rapid learning. This surprise response makes the tiger riddle particularly memorable and shareable. Experiences that violate expectations are processed more deeply and retained more strongly than routine, predictable experiences. The brain essentially flags surprising events as important, allocating additional resources to understanding and remembering them. 9. The paradox of control. The tiger riddle reveals a fundamental paradox about control and agency. The reader believes they are actively engaging with the puzzle, working to solve it through conscious effort and logical reasoning. In reality, they are being guided through a predetermined sequence of mental states by the riddle's creator. Their agency is both real and illusory. They are making choices and drawing conclusions, but within parameters established by another mind. This paradox extends to the nature of communication itself. When we read or listen, we feel that we are actively extracting meaning from symbols and sounds, yet the author or speaker has crafted those symbols to guide our thoughts in specific directions. Every act of communication involves this tension between active interpretation and passive guidance. 10. Cultural and historical context. Riddles like this one belong to an ancient tradition of verbal puzzles and brain teasers that appear in virtually every human culture. From Sphinx's riddle in Greek mythology to the playful wordplay of Lewis Carroll, humans have long been fascinated by language that doubles back on itself, that uses words to question the nature of meaning itself. The tiger riddle represents a modern evolution of this tradition, stripped of cultural specificity and reduced to its essential cognitive mechanics. It requires no specialized knowledge of history, mythology, or cultural context. Its power lies purely in its exploitation of universal features of human language processing. 11. The democratic nature of the trap. Unlike riddles that require specialized knowledge or cultural literacy, the tiger riddle is remarkably democratic in its operation. It works equally well on professors and children, on native speakers and those learning English as a second language. This universality suggests that it taps into fundamental features of human cognition that transcend education, culture, and linguistic background. This accessibility is itself part of the technology. The trap works best when it appears simple and approachable, when it invites engagement rather than intimidating potential victims with complexity. The tiger riddle's apparent simplicity is carefully designed camouflage that conceals its sophisticated cognitive machinery. 12. Implications and applications. Understanding how the tiger riddle works has practical applications across many domains. Educators can use similar principles to create memorable learning experiences that surprise students into deeper engagement with material. Communicators can employ expectation and subversion to make their messages more compelling and memorable. Even therapeutic interventions can benefit from understanding how surprise and cognitive reorganization facilitate change. The riddle also serves as a warning about the power of linguistic manipulation. If a simple three-line puzzle can so effectively capture and redirect attention, what might more sophisticated applications of these principles accomplish? Understanding the technology of cognitive entrapment is essential for recognizing and resisting unwanted mental manipulation. 13. Conclusion. The Eternal Tiger. The tiger riddle ultimately teaches us something profound about the nature of mind and meaning. It reveals that our consciousness, for all its sophistication, remains vulnerable to carefully crafted linguistic traps. It shows us that expectation and surprise are not merely cognitive processes, but technologies that can be wielded with precision and effect. Most importantly, it demonstrates that being caught by such a trap is not a sign of intellectual weakness, but evidence of healthy cognitive function. Only a mind capable of forming expectations, following logical sequences, and reorganizing understanding can be caught by the tiger riddle. In a very real sense, the ability to be surprised is the mark of intelligence itself. The riddle catches us because we are thinking beings, because we seek patterns and meaning, because we cannot help but engage with puzzles and problems. In catching us, it reveals not our limitations but our capabilities, not our flaws but our fundamentally curious and pattern-seeking nature. And perhaps that is the deepest lesson of all. Sometimes being caught is not defeat, but discovery, not entrapment, but enlightenment. The tiger that catches us may be the very tiger we needed to meet,